So, there I was, at one of those classic dinner party convention evenings, and somebody says to me, "So, what do you do for a living?" And I looked at them, and before I could stop myself, I said, "Why, I'm a consulting hydrogeologist." And as we heard earlier from Steve, they went like this. Tonight, I'm going to be an explorer. What I'm going to talk to you about tonight, I consider to be an exploration. As a scientist, we get to do that rarely, but in this particular situation, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Tonight, we're going to explore what I refer to as the groundwater and near well microbiome, and I'm going to introduce you to several different things. What I want to focus on is that of the 8 billion people on our planet, perhaps 500 have seen this image. This is going down inside a water well, a brand new one, with a video camera to look at how it's constructed. This next one, assuming I can get the technology to work, is inside the perforated section of the well. This is where the water comes into the well. Now, very few people have seen this, and most people know that we rely on groundwater as a source of water for what we drink and what we use on a daily basis. And that groundwater has been impacted over the years by people contaminating it and then cleaning it up and then recontaminating it. But there are also bacteria in the subsurface. Municipal wells are highly regulated with regards to the amounts of bacteria they can have in them. So they're very safe to drink, but the bacteria are still naturally occurring inside of our aquifers. And when we drill a well into the subsurface, we create, for all intents and purposes, an artificial reef, a place for bacteria to colonize. The conditions change. It may be that we have introduced additional water flows, or it may be that we've altered the chemistry of the water in the well, allowing different aquifers to mix. It may be that we've added or taken away a certain gas. Or the bacteria like the metal that the wells are built with, and they use that as they corrode it as part of their life cycle. But the bacteria are there. They're naturally occurring. Now, we can introduce bacteria into the subsurface by accident, but generally speaking, they're there normally. But we can do things to increase the presence of those, and this is when we put in water wells. So I want to leave you, as we walk on this next step of our adventure, with a couple of thoughts to keep in mind. First and foremost, it's very important that we understand how our water wells work. These are conduits into the subsurface. It's the only way we get water out of the ground. But the second thing is that we need to protect these conduits. So I'm going to show you this next video, and I want to emphasize that I'm showing it to you because I want you to realize how important it is to protect our water wells. So this is a video of a video, and what you're actually seeing are cockroaches climbing around on the inside of this well. This well was contaminated. It had bacteria in it. It was providing water to 2 different houses and a store and a business. And they couldn't understand why they were having problems meeting their water quality standards. Well, the problem was they hadn't maintained the top of the well. And this video demonstrates, as we go down in the well, that cockroaches, which are vegetarians, they don't need to frighten you, they seek water out. And in this instance, the top of this well was not sealed off adequately. And this is a very unique and specific example of the problem that we can have when we're trying to maintain the quality of our water. That if we don't seal off the top of these wells, then these little guys get in there and they crawl around. And when they die or when they poop, you find that the bacteria increase inside of the well. So yes, it's rather icky to look at it, but these sort of things can happen. The majority of the videos that I'm going to show you, and there's just a few more, are going to introduce you to the living microbiome beneath our feet that grows inside not all but some wells. I think we've seen enough of cockroaches. So what is the groundwater and near well microbiome? So that's a cross-section of a well. It's a vertical tube into the subsurface, engineered with perforations towards the bottom. You saw a video of that earlier. And what these wells do is they provide access into the subsurface such that we have an opportunity to withdraw the water that most of us drink. These wells in particular suffer from or can be affected by the presence of bacteria when they're acting as artificial reefs, when they start changing these conditions. Now, you can get bacteria from septic systems, you can get bacteria from a number of different sources, but the wells themselves are designed pretty much in most cases to reduce the risk of that potential problem. It's in the immediate area around the well that we see this near well microbiome begin to grow. And it probably starts on the outside of the well in what's known as the filter pack, the gravel around the well, and works its way in. So the changes in the water chemistry, the water flow, all of these different things go to contribute towards that. And sometimes these colonies arise in the well, and to a lesser degree outside. Like I said, they probably grow from the outside in, but there are cases where they may go the other way. So right down here in the perforated section of the well, the video that I showed you, is where we see the vast majority of these. And I know it's somewhat technical, but you're going to get the hang of this pretty quick. Let's go into the well. I want to focus on these because this is the really illustrative part of the presentation. What you're looking at now, this is an existing well that, well, we're going to go to this one. This is an existing well that was built and nobody put a pump in it and they just let it sit. And as it sat, what it did was it began to act as a base, a substrate for microbiology and bacteria to grow. So what you see there in the bottom right corner of the screen is actually a living bacterial colony inside of a water well. The thin, white, translucent material is more than likely a polysaccharide that's holding the colony together. So in a way, these are sugar-coated. That's what polysaccharides are. And this bacteria is plugging off the well and preventing it from performing the way it was originally designed. So it acts as a location or a substrate, a base for the bacteria to grow on. So let's advance on to this well. As we go down inside of the well, you're looking down the well as the camera travels into greater and greater depths. And you'll notice around it, we start seeing these bumps on the side. Now, these are out of the ordinary. We don't usually see this. And in particular, as you're looking at this, what you'll notice here and there is what appear to be little horns sticking out. Nobody knew what they were at first. So we continue to go down the well, exploring and trying to understand what it is we saw. Do we see differences in water movement? Do we see differences in water clarity? And all along, what we see is this buildup on the perforated sections of the wells. But at some point in the video, what we encountered, what we saw, was something we had never seen before. It appeared to be a soft deposit, as it was called in the well. And there's one right there. Now we're going to go back down in the well again, and we had an inkling of what we were looking at. We had a premonition that what we might be encountering is a large microbiological colony present in this well. But we didn't feel like we had a good enough understanding of it at this point, but we continued on. You can see these individual horns that appear to be sticking out of the well casing, but again, it could have been a chemical deposit, it could have been a lot of different things. So we continued to explore down the well, all the time trying to understand the density and what we're looking at, but understanding also that these are things that we had never seen before. When we first got our hands on this video, we were beginning to question ourselves as to what are we actually looking at, and it became clear over time that we were looking at something that, as I said earlier, maybe 500 people out of 8 billion have actually seen. So what we see here, as we get closer and closer to about 278 feet, is an increase in the density of these unusual nodules with little horns on them on the side of this well. This is a drinking water well. This provides water to people. It's a public water supply well. And so what we see is not only do we need to clean this well, but there is this unusual structure on the side. And we wanted to get clear evidence of what we were looking at so that we might at some point show this to people. This particular video has ventured all around the world, and people have looked at it and tried to understand it. But what we came to a final conclusion is we don't know. We can only surmise that what we're looking at is some form of bacterial colony, and the structures that we're going to look at here in a few minutes represent the adaptation of this microbial colony to living inside a water well. Now, the wells are 16 inches in diameter. These cameras are not zoomed in, so what you're looking at is something that is on the order of 1 to 5 inches long. And it's actually trying to live inside of a water supply well. So there's our soft deposit right there. It looks like an octopus, at least to some of us it did. But around the very edges of it, you see again that white translucent polysaccharide material, which is probably gluing the colony in place to some extent. It's also protecting the colony. It acts as a shield around it. And so this was our first definitive indication that what we had was something that wasn't a chemical deposit, because if you look closely enough, it's moving. Now, it's not moving because the bacteria are moving. It's moving because it's being influenced by the current of water that's moving inside of the well. But the fact that it was moving indicated that it wasn't chemically attached to the side of the casing. It was physically attached, but that was a consequence of the polysaccharide coating. And I don't mean to overemphasize this. This is not common in every single well, but the world beneath our feet is alive. It's not sterile. And there are things down there that are worth studying. So here's my hero of the night. Once it comes into focus, what you're looking at is that clear, cloudy polysaccharide coating and a long filter tube. Now, we still haven't determined whether that tube is bringing water to the colony, which is probably underneath that deposit that you're looking at, or is it expelling waste as the colony corrodes that metal casing. In either case, what we're looking at here is a living organism 278 feet below the surface that is developed and adapted to survive in an environment without light, with limited oxygen, and with water and metal present. For the last video, as we were going down in this well, this was a typical well. The blue color comes from the light, the LEDs that the camera uses, so the water doesn't look like that normally. And I apologize, the video's old and so it tends to skip and start. But out of the gloom, looking down out ahead of us as we began to look into this, we started to see reflections coming back at us. And we started wondering what it is that we were actually seeing. And it was about at this point that we noticed something completely unseen ever before. I know that sounds grandiose, but as far as I know, nobody has ever seen this beforehand. These are filamentous bacteria. They are actually growing into the well through perforations. This is a very old well, but they're growing into the well, and if you pay close enough attention to the video, you'll see that they're moving. Now again, they're not moving because they're moving themselves. They're moving as a consequence of the water flow in the well. And they are, and I don't have a better term for it, filter feeding. They're extracting something out of the water or expelling something into the water that aids in their life cycle. These bacteria go down this well for another 200 feet. We have found evidence of bacterial colonies from very shallow to very deep, in excess of 1,000 feet below the surface. So in closing, as you look at these videos, what I'm coming to you to talk to you about is not to concern you, but to make you aware that the subsurface is not sterile, it's worth protecting, and in particular, our water wells are things that we need to be very cautious of, because we have visitors or friendlies down below. Nobody believes that these are harmful bacteria, but then again, I'm going to emphasize we don't know yet. There's a need for greater research to understand this part of our world. We know very little about the deep oceans on our planet. We know more about the moon than we know about the deep oceans, but we know even less about our water wells. So in closing, I want to encourage everybody here, as you embrace the concept of groundwater and water wells, to be aware that we have a whole world alive beneath our feet. Thank you very much.